Perplexed and Method EU in the upper finals. Let's get to it. The wait is over. Siege of Boralus is here.
Joined by Tattles. I'm Travis, of course, casting our game today. We have Divine Field pre-popping that N'Zoth Psych Shell trinket for this mount run, jumping off the mount, landing the Thunderclap, and doing the Lightfoot Potion here. Now on a pretty similar strategy. Actually, it looks like they're maybe melding on Now's side, whereas Divine Field yeeting all the way through here as fast as humanly possible, or night elfably possible, as the case may be.
Okay, so that's the difference in the Rogue and the Demon Hunter right there, is the fact that they were able to they were trying to group meld it off. Divine Field ends up paying because he's just a little bit too close to some of the trash. Oh, more people are in combat on the side of Perplexed!
No. That's not good. That's very bad, actually. That's the exact opposite of how that's supposed to look. Unfortunately, it looks like Swagshot is safely out of combat. He will be able to go in Engineering Res Zamok, and they will be able to get a Mass Res off of that, but this must have cost them almost a minute, probably. Meanwhile, Method EU, they had that Rogue available, so they were able to meld earlier in their skip, and then they were able to Shroud for the rest of the skip. And
Zalia goes down.
Zalia actually goes down. Raging is active here, and I think a
6-second bursting
may have gone off.
Oh! All right, well, easy.
They're going to have to commit a battle res to this as well, though, because they didn't have Zalia is their only real res out of combat. So both teams have committed their battle res in this first area. Method EU has used their Bloodlust, and Perplex has just used theirs as well. They're on this trash pool in the same spot. But Perplex maybe about 40 seconds behind, I'd say, here, as Method EU moves into the first boss fight up against Chopper Redhook, the Alliance first boss. Slightly different than the Horde first boss, actually. Has most of the same mechanics, but a couple of small tweaks in behavior that is a little bit interesting to watch always.
Yeah, he's also way thicker.
Definitely one of the thickest bosses that we have available here in Battle for Azeroth, although nothing on some of the earlier bosses of the game's history, Patchwork in particular.
Rawl the Gluttonous is real thick, too.
Yeah, Rawl might be a contender for thickest boss of BFA, for sure.
All right, anyways.
I think Unbound Abomination might take the cake, though. That's a fantastic boss model.
Get me out of this conversation. All right, so Perplexed, also on to Chopper Redhook. Like Dratnos was saying, they're probably about 40 seconds behind, plus like the 20-second penalty for deaths. Whereas Method EU only has that 1 5-second penalty for deaths. Chopper Redhook does, in fact, end up going down for them. They are moving on to place some more of this trash. So it looks like they're actually going to be doing the Commander plus this Wave Shaper over here. Actually, there's a bunch of Marauders. They ended up not grabbing that Commander yet.
Yeah, this pull presumably is setting up, it's not a big pull in and of itself, but needs to be taken care of so that they can advance through the dungeon here. Their Shroud isn't available, and they're not deciding to do something else with this. In fact, this is a little bit slower than I was expecting as well. I would have expected them to pull those two groups together, but maybe they found that to be a little bit too lethal with Bursting and Raging active at the same time.
They could have been behind in time. So, like, whenever Zalia ended up dying, they had to waste a few seconds to look to Engineering Res him, and the Patrol may have just not been in the correct spot for where it normally would be.
That could well be it, yeah, because if it's too far along there, you'd get the Irontide Raider along with that pull, and that mob, particularly with Raging active, can be really, really deadly.
Yeah. Something also important to note is that while there is 2 Mistweaver monks, they are both running Conflict and Strife, so Wade the Crane is going to be a large source of their healing. Wade the Crane can be good if used to be able to heal through bursting, but sometimes it's really hard to continue to like DPS into mobs as they're dying, so like maybe they mismatch pack health. Swagshot, you're in the water. Do not get eaten.
What was that disengage? That was creative there. That was an Olympic dive into the water there. I'm going to give that a 10.
Give that an 8.
All right. The Perplex actually catching up a little bit here, I'd say.
Yeah.
Looks like they're maybe down to just a 30-second disadvantage here as they are doing the pull just behind where Method EU is. Both teams on pretty much the exact same path so far. How do you think that the difference is going to be between the Rogue composition and the Demon Hunter here for Perplex?
I ultimately think the difference in the Rogue and the Demon Hunter composition actually comes near the Hadal room area with how they're moving around. Like I believe Frag will actually end up tricksing now and start gathering mobs for him at some points, which makes it significantly easier, where Divine on the side of Perplex has to just group all of the mobs himself. I think that's where some of the time disparity actually ends up coming from, not exactly necessarily the damage output. Obviously, that Shroud that we saw earlier was a little bit safer as opposed to the full Night Elf thing, but that's, at the end of the day, not exactly going to be a time saver loss.
The Night Elf thing should have worked too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
in theory, it should work as well.
All right, we see Method EU working here through some bursting stacks, able to survive it as they deal with this pull right before the bridge. They are soon going to be moving on to the second boss, Dread Captain Lockwood, with some of the trash right in front of her, if I had to guess. Perplexed, again, about a pull behind here. Let's see if they opt for the same strategy here or if they are sneaking through. Looks like they might be doing some sneaking around here because their hunters are both in camouflage.
Yes.
Moving, okay, they're just camouflaging to get into position, I suppose. They are now pulling that pack.
Huh.
Camouflage does also come with a hot on oneself as well, so that can be useful for surviving bursting, I suppose.
Here comes the darkness out on the 7 stack of bursting there as all the mobs got just almost instantly deleted, so that was a good use of the darkness there. Just making sure that Zamok's healing is not exactly the most challenging thing because they used both of their turtles at a different point. They used both of their turtles whenever they killed the Marauder in the previous pack with the spotter. So now they're taking this commander, they're getting him into position here, and then they're going to... They look like they're setting up some paralyses, I guess, and some traps here to kind of separate this pullout. I wonder what the point would be. So like they're doing the Cannoneer by itself. I bet they end up taking all this trash straight into the boss, whereas on the side of Method EU, they did not have as much of finesse, and they're just running straight into the pack.
Yeah, Method EU dealt with, I think, the Cannoneer and the boss at the same time, whereas Perplex decided to deal with the Commander and the Cannoneer at the same time, so... Either way, the same sort of number of pulls, and that commander actually still alive on the side of Perplexed. But yeah, Method EU has dealt with that first intermission phase, and they are now going to try and kill Dread Captain Lockwood. It is a fortified setting that we're in right now, so it's very much possible that they can get this down without her ever returning to her boat. Meanwhile, Perplexed, on basically the same boss health when she goes to that first intermission, are going to have to deal damage to that Cannoneer in order to get her off the boat. Method EU opening up, I'd say, maybe
they got it.
A little bit here. Yeah, very close.
Yeah, that was super tight.
Close.
So on the side of Perplex, something that you may have saw is Zamok ended up dropping his Ring of Peace, and the reason for that is because you can bounce Dread Captain Lockwood off of the Ring of Peace, and it will cancel her escape cast or delay it for a few seconds, so it allows you to get a couple extra globals worth of damage, especially if the damage check is tight on Dread Captain Lockwood. Method EU, though, didn't look like they had too many problems just with how they were able to single target all the way through it. So this is going to be on Perplex here. If they get another phase on Lockwood, then that's going to be costly.
Yeah, I mean, either way, they are behind, but they would that would cost them maybe 30 seconds or 45, which that's a lot of seconds when you're playing up against Method EU. Looks like they are going to be able to get this, though. The energy bar is what we're comparing to the health bar here. Health bar going to hit 0% right before that energy bar fills up, and they will be able to get out of this boss fight without too much extra time lost there, making their way to that same obelisk that Method EU is just about finished with killing. Samrak, Beckoner of Chaos, the Fear guy in there. And 4 members of the team now are going to move through, whereas the tank now is going to jump out of the realm.
Yep.
And he's going to make his own way to Hadal's room, where he will then start boss combat, and that will yoink all 4 of the other members back into the real world as well.
You can see now right there. He has that orange marker on top of his head. He's running all the way through. He's actually not in that void realm with everybody else, so he's going to be looking. If you see on screen, he pressed his meld, and now he's going to be looking to pull Hadal, like he was saying. Miraz and Gingy are getting their traps, freezing traps in place to trap some of the mobs that are on the outside of the room because they don't want to pull them with Hadal. So
yeah, snipers, very deadly mobs that won't even come into the middle of this pull here, so they won't die.
Exactly. So they're waiting. They're going to pull them in later whenever they get a little bit more advantage, or maybe they end up like meld. Okay, so they're positioning themselves to where they can pull those snipers in a little bit. Perplex doing something very similar to the strategy that we've seen from Method EU here. Killing Samrak. I assume Divine is going to do something the exact same as what we saw from now. Look, Divine right there on the left side of the screen. He leaps over. He instantly fears all those mobs. He is light-footing all the way through. Then he is going to look to meld off all of the combat from all of those trash mobs so that they will be okay. And then from there, he will attack Hadal, pull his group out of the realm, and then they will be in a similar position as where Method EU is. The bursting here can be very dangerous, though.
Yeah, bursting, always a huge threat, especially if it lines up with any of the boss AoE damage. You know, this boss does quite a bit of damage when those swirlies explode. And if that lines up with a 7-stack of bursting, or if it comes after the healer has expended all of their resources against that healing, then that can be really, really deadly. But it looks like Method EU are probably going to be okay here. They do have those 2 commanders, which have that trample cast that can stun and be a problem. But, you know, most of the trash here is dead. Most of the bursting threat is handled. They should be okay here as long as they can keep dealing with this boss. Yeah, the boss is pretty low on health here. Should be all right for Method EU. Meanwhile, Perplexed, still in the hectic phase, the start of this fight. against the same enemies.
Raging Monka S. Okay, so they get a good they don't get a refresh on their bursting stacks. Everything is okay. The bolstering shouts going off, but the mobs are incredibly far away, so everything is going to be all right because they do not have an AoE purge. They only have that purge from Wolf Disco being on that Demon Hunter.
They have the 2 Hunter pet purges as well.
That is true. Yeah.
So they actually have quite a lot of tools to deal with a couple of bolstering shots that go out, but not an AoE one. So when there's 10 mobs, it's still a little too much.
Well, the pet purge is also include the pet that has purge is also the pet that has tranquility shot as well, right?
Yeah, it's the same ability that purges both an enrage and a magic effect.
Okay, interesting. So, okay, yeah, Method EU down Hadal. Perplexed here is probably going to be downing Hadal within the next...
Ooh, Perplexed has a tough... Look at that brutal wave overlap they had where all the safe spot was pretty much covered by ice there.
That is very scary.
You hate to see that. They managed to find a safe spot, though. That is a very lethal overlap, potentially. Meanwhile, Method EU, though, making their way down towards the spotter area, they are going to enrage that spotter and then use it to kill a bunch of the pirates in this area at once. We'll see if they're able... Really, this is a fight against time. You know, it's a fight about landing a couple of those swirlies, a couple of those artillery barrages from the first set, and not having to deal with these mobs for too long, right?
I believe it takes 2 or 3 of the artillery barrages from this spotter on this 19 setting to be able to kill all of this trash. All right, so here comes the sighted artillery. You see everybody...
all of the members of their group right in the middle of the pack.
Exactly.
There. That's exactly what you want to do, because no matter who it targets, it would have been okay there. Nobody was standing out at range to be a potentially bad target. 2 turtles come out to completely immune those bursting stacks.
Yep.
Cloak comes out from Fragment, so only now and Zalia had to deal with those 11 stacks of bursting, and 2 people with 11 stacks of bursting is not all that bad at all for a Mistweaver. They are going to move on now to a Demolisher, and some more pirates here, beautifully executed from Method EU. That's the Method EU that we know from previous seasons of the MDI. Incredibly great play from them.
Perplexed doing something very similar. They're waiting for that commander or the Demolisher to walk away. They're dropping their Ring of Peace. They're trying to get everything in position. They have their sighted artillery come out just a little bit early, so Divine is going to have to face tank these mobs for a few moments. Let the next sighted artillery come out. Get everything grouped up. They're using binding shots on the side of Perplex to try to get everything ready. Here comes the sighted artillery. They're going to use Shockwave. Presumably a couple of turtles, maybe a... I can't tell if their Demon Hunter's running Netherwalk. Their Demon Hunter does not look like he's running Nether. You're just going to have to heal through a couple of stacks of that. Perplex, also incredibly clean pull.
Yeah, Perplex looking good here as well. They are doing this exact same strategy here. But Method EU is ahead in terms of time right now. Method EU, 95% on enemy forces here. They're going to finish off that spotter, and they are going to make their way to Vikgoth, where they will secure the last little bit of enemy forces they need from the awakened lieutenants that will be spawning in at the start of that boss fight.
You know what's funny about this? They actually play 3 awakened mobs. And so if you are unfamiliar with Siege of Boralus, only 2 awakened mobs spawn on that near side platform for some reason. The spider, the caster Voidweaver Malthier, which is the hardest one to move, actually spawns on the back left platform, so you're going to have to see them getting kicks to be able to deal with that. Zamak goes down to the side of Perplex.
Zalia goes down for Method EU to the barrage, the RP barrage from Vikgoth.
That's unlucky.
That is not what you want to see.
Yeah.
They're going to recover, though.
Oh, Divine! Oh, Divine goes down.
Even inside the life cocoon there. I think they might have pulled a couple of extra enemies there by accident, because I see 2 Demolishers in that pull. I'm not sure if they intended to get that second one. They're going to try and recover this pull, but things are going bad on the side of Perplex. Meanwhile, Method EU, into that very last boss fight, they are using their second Bloodlust here against this. Moving over after the first Gripping Tentacle is down, and they are now good on the DPS check. They just have to finish off the Demolishing Terror, and then they can kill these 3 awakened enemies pretty much at their leisure.
Exactly. So they don't fire the cannon. So if you fire the cannon, then the extra Demolishing Terror and Gripping Tentacle would spawn, and you really don't want that to happen, so they're biding their time. Zalia is just going to have to heal through these debuffs from Vikgoth, while just the rest of the group is trying to kill off all 3 of these obelisk mobs. So this is actually a really good strategy from the side of Method EU.
Meanwhile, Perplexed is going to dismiss pets and then Shadow Meld to remove combat from that extra Demolisher, and they are going to go down to Vikgoth themselves here. In order to win, though, they are probably going to need Method EU to have some difficulties on this boss fight, or Wolf Disco is going to have to pull out some insane Demon Hunter DPS that Method EU does not have access to, of course, with their Rogue instead.
I didn't know. Was it going to become 2 DPS?
Maybe. I don't know.
So right here, Method EU, as long as they're able to just get through this Dark Fury cast and like these couple Awakened mobs,
they've actually started the timer on this next platform while Awakened mobs are still up because they know they can deal with it.
That's the
aggressive efficient cleave.
Yeah, that's the best optimization. They got Blood of the Corruptor down just a little bit earlier. They were cleaving off of it and decided that as soon as that mob dies, the way that you save seconds is by just instantly firing that cannon as soon as you can.
And they're now onto the Gripping Terror. Getting in combat with the Gripping Terrors on the second and third platform is what starts the timer for the second and beyond Demolishing Terrors.
Exactly.
To spawn, so they want to do as much damage to this as possible. Try and beat that Demolishing Terror spawn. If one spawns, it's not the end of the world. But if that second one spawns afterwards, then they can start to be in trouble. That's the first one, though, that spawned. And so they are going to be okay up against that. Meanwhile, Perplexed also on the second platform. They have got all three of their awakened enemies still alive, though. Blood of the Corruptor going down. Let's see if they decide to shoot the cannon right now as well.
So now is actually going to be firing the cannon on the side of Method EU. He's going to wait for all of his friends to get over to the other side. Then he's going to Lightfoot all the way across and make his way towards that Demolishing Tentacle, while the rest of his group mates are just burning down that Gripping. That's the way that they save so much damage in order to be able to kill the Gripping in one round before they need to even kill that Demolishing, is just by now firing the cannon.
Yeah, because that Demolishing Terror isn't going to start casting that Hull Cracker until it's done its first slam, so there's a little bit of wiggle room for them to have, to get over there a little bit later, and that's going to mean that they can kill this Gripping Terror, and once they fire this cannon, that will be the end of this dungeon.
Whew, this was so close and so clean by both of these teams. Sure, Perplex had some issues at the very beginning with their Shroud and their Meld skips. Great run by both teams, though, honestly.